Instead of spraying my distress sprays directly onto paper, I'm going to be showing you how easy it is to do this smooshing technique. Let's get into it. For this technique, you're going to need a non-porous surface. I like to use my Glassboard studio mat. I'm going to spray Fossilized Amber, Rusty Hinge, and Seedless preserves onto my mat. I'm going to be using a distress tag from Holtz, and I spritz it with a little bit of water. Then I'm going to turn it over and smoosh it into the sprays. It's really that simple, and this is such a great way to use your sprays if you're intimidated to spray them directly onto your project. But we're definitely not done with this tag just yet, because now we're going to create some depth in the background. And I do this by spraying some water into my hand, and I sprinkle it onto the project. I like to pick up some of the excess water with a paper towel and dry some of it in place. To add even more interest, I like to splatter some of the colors onto the background. Then I'll spritz it with just a little bit of water, not too much because I want some of those splatters to stay in place. I'm going to pick up my tag and tilt it side to side and back and forth to get some of that color moving around. I'm going to dry my tag completely before moving on to the next step. To add more interest to my tag, I'm going to be using a background stamp. I'm going to be stamping it with some VersaMark ink. I'm using my MISTI and my Stampendable tool to make sure that I get a good impression. I want the pattern to be subtle, so I'm going to be using some clear embossing powder. I'm going to take a clean paintbrush and dust off some of the powder in random areas to get a more grungy look. Then I'm going to take my heat tool and melt that powder. Even though it's not that visible, it adds texture to the project. The next thing I'm going to do is add some gesso to the tag with a brayer. I take my brayer with a lot of built up paint and lightly add some gesso to the edges. Using a brayer with a lot of built up paint on it is going to add a lot of texture to the project. Then I'm going to take some Dina Wakley gloss spray in white and splatter it onto the tag. I am going to use some of the florals from one of Simon Hurley's new stamp sets, and I'm going to stamp them out with permanent black ink on some distress heavy stock. I didn't want to add a lot of color to the stamped images, so I'm going to spritz the cardstock with a little bit of water, and I'm going to splatter on some Seedless Preserved Distress Spray stain, and then a little bit of Fossilized Amber. I add a little bit of water to help that color move around just a little bit. I'm going to dry the cardstock and fussy cut out the floral images. I'm going to add some Barely Art glue to the center of each image so they are not laying flat on the tag once I glue them down. This will give the project a little bit of dimension. I added some sewing for some more interest. I added a cute little pumpkin from another one of Simon Hurley's new stamp sets, and I finished it off with a sentiment. I showed the smooshing technique pretty fast in this video, and it's just the beginning to all the possibilities you can do with your sprays. So if you want to learn even more techniques, be sure to check out the short playlist right here. I'll see you there.